sort of, lovely. That's very relaxing, thank you. I appreciate that. I want to know not just what have we learned, but how have we learned it? How would we study this? What are the first questions that people ask? If I wanted to turn there's a little feedback. If I want to turn down this thing here, okay, super. How do people do this work? You know, what does it mean to be a scientist of relationships? How might we all be scientists of relationships in our own lives and professionally? So we'll spend a lot of time talking about, like, how do we do this work? How do we study something like relationships? And one of the reasons that we're doing that is it's something that irritates me is people say, you'll hear journalists say, oh, love. How do you study that? You know, you can't study that. Yes, you can. I've been studying it for almost 20 years. I assure you, you can do it. And then finally, I'd like you to be informed at the end of 10 weeks. 10 weeks from now, there are a lot of issues about relationships that are highly controversial, and people talk a lot about them. Pundits and editorialists and our own family members at holiday dinners will say, oh, I'll tell you a thing or two about relationships. Well, not that I want you to be a know-it-all or anything, but I would like you, at least in your own head, whether you choose to speak up or not, to say, I happen to know that there's some data that bear on these issues. And there are. Most of the time, there are data, research, that bear on the complicated issues of the day. I'd like you to have a sense of what that data look like so that you can be informed. A lot of the times, you'll still be able to, you can form your own opinion, but at least you'll know what the data are. That's what we're going to do in this course. So before we really get into some of these goals, we should probably have a good idea of what we're talking about. So I've said that we're talking about intimate relationships. Well, what on earth is an intimate relationship? And we want to do better than the Supreme Court's definition of pornography, which is, well, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. We want to do better. We want to say, no, there's something about a relationship. There's something that makes these things an intimate relationship. And to pin this thing down, what I'd like to do is let's start broad. Let's start by saying, what's a relationship? Now, for those of you who took social psychology with me in the past, this next 15 minutes or so will be a bit of a review. So pay attention, but you can also feel smug that you already know this. What's a relationship? How do you know that two people are in a relationship? If two people are sitting next to each other, I'm looking at them, I can't tell if they're in a relationship or not. What makes two people in a relationship? Any guesses? No? Oh, there we go. What's your name? Marissa. Well, that's a damn good guess. And Marissa, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but we might ask, what is interdependence? No, I won't put you on the spot. So what Marissa suggests is that we define a relationship between two people, two farm animals, or two bodies in space as a function of their degree of interdependence. Well, what is interdependence? Interdependence is the quality of affecting each other's outcomes. We are in a state of interdependence to the extent that my actions affect your outcomes, and at the same time, your actions affect my outcomes. That's the definition of interdependence. The mutual ability to affect each other's outcomes. Where interdependence exists, then a relationship exists. So we might ask, are we in a relationship right now? Yes, we are. You didn't know. It's totally true. How's it going? We're in a relationship right now. Why? Because my actions affect your outcomes. Your outcomes of being bored or interested, thinking I'm going to drop this as soon as I get out of this room, or no, I want to take this even though it doesn't turn out to be that much about human communication. My behavior, what I choose to do, affects your outcomes. And your behavior affects mine. If I ask a question, you decide to raise your hand and contribute to class, that affects my outcomes. And if you decide not to, that affects my outcomes too. We're absolutely interdependent. We're affecting each other. Okay, what about you and another UCLA student? Are you interdependent with other UCLA students? Yes. Because you can choose to park on campus and take a spot that someone else might take, and sign up for a limited course and then someone else doesn't get to take that course? If this class were graded on a curve, which it isn't, then your grades would affect other people's grades. You're all interdependent. We're all interdependent with everyone else on the UCLA campus. Well, I mean, if you're going to define interdependence that broadly, then maybe we're interdependent with everyone on the planet, by that definition, through global warming, right? I mean, I drive my SUV, and that means that someone in Australia, has a hot summer and a rainy winter. Yes, that's right. This definition of interdependence says, to the extent that we affect each other's outcomes on the planet Earth, we are all interdependent with everyone else on the planet Earth. You get it? So that's what interdependence is all about. So we've narrowed the field of what a relationship is to the thing that exists between us and every other human on the Earth. Okay. But now we want to get more specific. We want to say, well, of all those relationships that we have with everyone else on the planet, we're not interested in this course in all of those relationships. We're interested in a particular kind of relationship. Well, before we define that kind of relationship, we want to say, well, what are the different dimensions along which relationships can vary? And a couple of guys who've been thinking about this came up with 5 pretty basic ones. And what these are ways of mapping the landscape of relationships. Ways of saying, here are some ways of organizing all the relationships on the planet Earth. And that's going to be good for us, because once we have them all organized, we'll be able to decide, okay, now this is the part of the landscape, the section of the map that we care about. So one dimension of interdependence is frequency of contact. So although you are interdependent with a person living in Australia, unless you have particular reason to contact Australia, your frequency of contact is very low, possibly 0. You have 0 direct contact with that person. But there are other people in your life that you see every day. Maybe your roommates, maybe your romantic partner, maybe your spouse. Well, you can imagine ranking all the relationships in the world in terms of the frequency at which the two people contact each other. From daily, from minute to never. But that's not the only dimension along which relationships vary. Another would be duration of contact. In other words, how long does a particular level of contact last? So you might imagine, in this relationship, our relationship that we have right now, for many of us, the frequency of contact is twice a week. And for many of us, the duration of contact will be 10 weeks. Oh, I'd love to hear from you afterwards, but you'll never call. So that's okay. So that's a kind of relationship where we have a 10-week relationship of twice weekly contact. But my relationship with my sister is, we've lasted our whole life. We probably will continue to last. You imagine people in your life that you had relationships with for a period of time, and then it stopped. And other people in your life you had a relationship with for no time, other people in your life you had relationships with for your entire life, like family members. So again, you can imagine ranking all the relationships you've ever had along how long a particular level of contact lasted. We imagine that relationships vary in the diversity of different interactions that we share with a particular other person. So again, in this relationship that we have right now, if all you do is come to class and then leave class, the nature of our interactions is not very diverse. Mostly involves you listening and me talking. In contrast, our relationship with my spouse is quite diverse. We do a lot of different things together. We do chores, we have fun, we go on vacations, lots of interesting things. You imagine your own life. You've got friends that you'll study with and cook with and go apartment hunting with and commiserate with and get social support with. And you have other people like your dentist that you basically just sort of rinse and spit. So again, we can rank relationships on this dimension. Direction of influence. What that means is, in some relationships, one person has a much bigger effect on the other person than vice versa. So, you imagine that In some relationships, like for example, my relationship with the Academy Award-winning actress Julia Roberts is not very bidirectional. So it is a relationship because she affects me by making movies and being extremely charming on screen, and I affect her by either buying tickets to the movies or staying away. And she's affected by that. But the truth is that her behavior affects me a lot more than my behavior affects her. In contrast, my relationship with my wife, much more mutual. If she has a bad day, I have a bad day. If I have a good day, she has a good day. We're much more able to affect each other's lives. It's probably why I married my wife and not Julia. And again, you can rank relationships. You can imagine all the relationships that, your relationship with whatever Hollywood celebrity, unless you happen to know that person, is very unidirectional. Our relationship right now is fairly unidirectional. Frankly, I have a bigger influence on you right now than any one of you have on me. Although as a group, you could probably take me in a fight. And then, of course, your relationship with your friends is probably more bidirectional. And then you can imagine the final dimension that we were talking about here, strength of influence. Some people, like your ability to affect global warming experience of a person living in Australia, it exists, but it's very, 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 very small. In contrast, your ability to affect your best friend's outcomes is very strong. My ability to affect my daughter's outcomes is incredibly strong. If I wanted to, I could just say, "Hi, honey, we're moving to Nebraska." And she'd have to come with. But we're not going to do that. But the point is that you can imagine different relationships vary in how strong the influence is. So you can imagine with these 5 dimensions, drawing, if you're Albert Einstein, a 5-dimensional map, which is the total possible space in which all relationships must fall. Any relationship could be given sort of a point along any of these dimensions. So my question to you is, what if I really only want to understand close relationships, the important relationships in people's lives, the relationships that really make people live? Well, where on the map, where in that 5-dimensional space would the relationships be? How would we characterize them? Well, a few years back, in a book called Close Relationships, a UCLA professor, who is now passed away, but his name is Harold Kelly. And Harold Kelly was a brilliant social psychologist who gave a lot of thought to these issues. And he and his colleagues said, well, if those are the ways that all relationships can vary, then a close relationship is going to be one of strong, frequent, diverse interdependence that lasts over a considerable period of time. In other words, in this course, we don't care about the relationship between you and your dentist. We're not going to be talking about the relationship between you and somebody in Australia, unless you're in a long-distance relationship. We're going to talk about your close relationships, the people that have a strong influence on you, the people that you see a lot, or at least you interact with a lot, the people that you do a lot of different things with, not your dentist, not us. We're already off the table now. And the ones that last a considerable period of time. What kind of relationships fit this definition? Intimate relationships? Love relationships? Your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner? Yes. But that's not all. This is actually a little bit broader than what we're talking about in this course. What other kinds of relationships fit in this definition? What? Friends? Absolutely. Family? If you like, yeah, absolutely your family. Most people have this kind of relationship with their parents or their siblings. Absolutely. Well, in this course, we will not be talking much about your family relationships. We will not be talking much about friendships. This is a course about intimate relationships. So my question to you is, what's the difference? Now, so we're sort of narrowing it down. We started with all the relationships on the planet Earth. Then we're saying, no, we just want the close ones. And now I'm saying, no. We don't even want just the close ones. We only want the intimate ones. Well, what is intimacy? What makes the relationship an intimate relationship? What's the difference between your intimate relationships and your relationship with your siblings and family, which in this state should not be intimate? Where's the dividing line? Yes, what's your name? Luke.
One is chosen. You choose the people. You don't choose your family members.
But you choose your friends. Right. So that's not good enough. I appreciate the contribution, but it doesn't do it. You can choose your friends, and yet there's a difference between your friends and your intimate, I like you and I really like you. There is a difference there. What's your name? Heidi.
The effect it has on your brain chemistry.
That's interesting. The effect it has on your brain chemistry. So the idea being that an intimate relationship affects your brain chemistry more than a friendship. I believe you, Heidi. Absolutely. That's a very interesting idea. So Heidi says that we respond physiologically differently to our intimate relationships than to our friendships. Absolutely. What's your name? David.
Probably there's some sort of sexual...
Some sort of sexual something. That's not bad, David. Absolutely. Our intimate relationships have some kind of sexual charge. Now, I think that's probably a big part of it, and let's talk about that. So you have friends, and then you have more than friends. And what makes more than friends, David says, is it sex? Does you actually have to be having sex to make something an intimate relationship? No, clearly not, because you can have an intimate relationship that isn't sexual. You can have husbands and wives who've been married for many, many years, where sex is a distant, hazy memory. And yet you can still imagine that they have an intimate relationship. What makes it intimate is at least one thing that we care about in an intimate relationship is the potential for sex. There's some kind of sexual charge involved. Some kind of sexual potential, at least. What else? Was there another suggestion? Other people had something to add? What's your name? Honey. Honey? Honey, like, spell it. H-O-N-E-Y. Okay, hi, honey. Okay. Attraction. But we're attracted to our friends. What do you mean? What do you mean by attraction? What's the difference? What makes the attraction to our intimate partners different from how I find my friend an appealing person? Do you have an answer to that? Anything? What? It's sexual. So we're back to the sexual thing. That I like my friends. But with my intimate partners, I like them, and there's a sexual charge which there isn't with my friends. Dan? Intrusive thoughts. That's not bad. That's not bad, Dan. That's pretty good. So the idea being, I'll get you in a second. So the idea being that with my friends, I don't like lying in bed thinking, I wonder what my friend is thinking about me right now. I wonder if my friend likes me. I don't ever go like, oh, I can't stop thinking about my friend. That's good. What's your name? Wyatt. Wyatt?
Intimate partners are, special.
Special. That's not bad. What do you mean by special? How about this? I am perfectly okay if my friends have other friends. But I prefer if my wife just has one husband. So let's get to a slide on this, and let's see if we can summarize some of this. So what Wyatt says is recognizing in an intimate relationship, the partner is special and unique. You know what? Even if you are in an open relationship, and good luck to you if you are, there's still a sense that each partner in an open relationship, let's say you have 5, each one is special. Even if you are have multiple wives and you're on the HBO television show Big Love, still the idea is even if he has multiple wives, each one is special. Each one is particular and unique. And now, of course, our friends are also particular and unique, so that's not sufficient. But there is this idea that my intimate partnerships I want to monopolize. There's a sense of wanting to sort of own or possess something about the other person, which is really not true in friendships. Friendships are like, hey, I like you so much, you're my best friend. I could even say I wish you were spending more time with me, but there isn't a sense that I want to own you. But even that's not sufficient. There's typically a sense of desire. So there's this desire part of owning, that's part of desire, and then a sense of lust or sexual desire, which we typically think of as part of intimate relationships. Now, well, that raises a question. So what we're saying is, if you have the close relationship, frequent, diverse interdependence, strong interdependence, lasts a period of time, and then we add on this stuff, and it's personal, I think a person's special, and I've got some desire, I want to own them, I have a sexual charge, as Dave pointed out. My question is, what if I just have the sexual charge and nothing else? Is that an intimate relationship by this definition? It is not. What about a one-night stand? I mean, we met at a party, we had sex, it was fun, and we never heard from each other again. That can be a lot of fun things, but it isn't a relationship by this definition. And so that's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about sexual charge, when we're talking about sexual attraction, and a one-night stand can become a relationship, but a one-night stand isn't a relationship because it doesn't involve strong interdependence. It doesn't involve interdependence that lasts over a long period of time. We're talking about the whole package, all of it. Now, even when Elsa Einstein knew that her husband was having sex with other people, and even if she said, I don't want to have sex with that lout ever again, she still desired him. She still wanted him. She still wanted him to possess him. And in fact, for her, the price of possessing him was allowing him to have affairs. But the answer to this question is no. Physical intimacy, sexual intimacy is not what I mean by intimate relationship. And that's why even a marriage that is no longer sexual is still intimate, because it has a lot of interdependence, and because there's this sense of desire, and because there was once, but sexuality was part of it at one point. Are intimate relationships the same as romantic relationships? Why don't I talk about romantic relationships instead of intimate relationships? I'll answer that one for you. They're very, very close. The overlap between the idea of an intimate relationship and a romantic relationship is very, very close. There's a lot of overlap. But, again, a relationship can be not romantic at all anymore. It can be old. It can be boring. It can be conflictual. It can be aggressive. It can be hateful and murderous. And it's still intimate by this definition. Because they're still interdependent. There's still this passion, even if it's a negative passion. So we're talking about, out of the planet full of relationships, a pretty specific and concrete set of phenomena and human experiences. That said, this is one powerful human experience. Intimate relationships are really, really powerful. Now, I said that a couple slides ago. I just want to expand on that point because it's really worth driving home. Some people say, well, back in the old days, they understood that relationships are about society. Relationships are something you do to raise children. They understood that relationships were something that served a function, that beyond just love. Nowadays, in the 1960s, we invented love. In the 1968, the summer of love, we invented it. That's not actually the case. In fact, when I say that intimate relationships are universal, what I mean is that research shows, and anthropological research shows, that the idea of bonding with another human being in a monogamous way appears in every culture that's been studied ever on the planet Earth. Let me see if I can get you a little bit more detail about that. So this is the Fisher 1989 study, let me just consult my notes here, shows that across 100 different societies, not in every one, to tell you the truth, but in 90% of them, across the planet, industrial, pre-industrial, and agrarian, and tribal, there's this idea across the human species of mating with somebody for life. Mating with somebody, and that you're supposed to mate with that person for life. That's a goal. Also, in all of those societies, divorce. Across the world, the phenomenon is people want to bond, they want to bond for their whole life, and it's hard to. Moreover, when people describe what they want, you think, hey, there's cultural differences in love. And there are, and we'll be talking about some of them in this course. There are cultural differences. But there are also some incredible similarities across the planet. And these anthropologists, Janowiak and Fisher, notice this is a different Fisher than this Fisher. This is the Fisher with a C. Showed that in tribal societies, industrial societies, and everywhere in between, people want a companion that that can be emotionally close to. People want someone that cares about them. People want someone that they can have good sex with. Those are common standards throughout the planet. So this isn't like some Western thing we're studying. We're not studying the psychology of using the iPod, where you might say, well, that only applies to people with iPods. This applies to everybody. It's universal to the extent that in the universe, all the human beings in the universe care about this, given that they're all here on this planet. So it's everywhere. Human relationships are everywhere you look, so it makes sense that we want to know a little bit about how they work. Intimate relationships are powerful. I mentioned already that intimate relationships are strongly associated with having a good life, having a happy life. What's also true is when you ask people, what are the best experiences in your life? People say, phenomena associated with relationships. Falling in love. Many people say that my wedding day or the time that we had a child together. Phenomena in intimate relationships provide us with the peak experiences of life. Life is short, and in that time our peak experiences happen in intimate relationships. Well, then that's something we ought to know about. But what's even more poignant is that in the same damn relationships are our lowest lows. Our worst experiences are in relationships. A colleague of mine named Bella DiPaolo studies lying and deception. She did a study. She asked people two questions. She said, the first set of questions was, when was the last time you told a little white lie and who did you tell it to? And then, what's the biggest lie you ever told and who did you tell that to? Here's the answer. People tell little white lies to strangers, but they save the big lies for their intimate partners. When women are killed, the cops know, I'm sorry to say, the first place to look for suspects is that person's intimate partner. And some high percentage of the time, that's who did it. What a crazy phenomenon intimate relationships are. The same place where we get our ultimate fulfillment, satisfaction, and joy, and our depression comes from intimate relationships, our suicides come from breakups of intimate relationships, and murder comes out of intimate relationships. All from the same phenomenon, the highest highs and lowest lows. Well, we better understand it then. And finally, intimate relationships affect our health, as Heidi was pointing out to us earlier today. Couple good examples of this. Well, before I give you the examples, it's not obvious. No one would say, reading a good book affects my health. Maybe it does. But there's no reason necessarily that sort of this psychological and social experience of a relationship should affect the way my heart beats, should affect neuropeptides that are bouncing around in my brain. I frankly don't even know what a neuropeptide is, I'll be honest with you. But it does. Our social lives affect our physical lives. Let me give you two examples. Cohen and his colleagues study people by putting them in a functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner. So they use functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRIs, to get pictures of people's activity in their brain. And what they wanted to know was, how do relationships affect the brain's reaction to threat. And to get this, what they did was they put women, only women, into a scanner, one at a time. And they showed them a screen while they're in the scanner. They're scanning their brains, and women are looking at a screen at the same time. And on the screen, it's blank, except once in a while, an X appears. And what they're told is, every time the X appears, there's a 20% chance that we will give you an electrical shock on your ankle. And they're strapped in on their ankle with a shock buzzer. It's a small shock, but it's there. And the idea is that every time they see the X, they know 20% chance I'm going to get a shock. And the shock is, a little tickle, but it's uncomfortable. Well, if you put people in the scanner, women alone in the scanner, and they're staring at every time they see the X, their brain lights up. The part of their brain associated with responding to threat lights up because they're threatened. Oh no, I'm about to get shocked. That isn't fun. I'm not happy about that. So these researchers had two other conditions. They did two other conditions, randomly assigning these women to one of these two other conditions. In one condition, the women, while their heads were in the scanner, their hands, they were able to hold the hand of a stranger. They were able to hold a stranger's hand. That's it. Just hold a stranger's hand. And that didn't make much difference to how their brains reacted to the threat. Their brains still lit up pretty much. But the final group, the third group, was asked to bring their romantic partners into the lab. And they were allowed to hold their partner's hand. And in that case, their activation was absolutely depressed. Not absolutely, but a lot depressed. They were less threatened. They're still getting shocked. They're still in the scanner. Everything's the same, but because they're holding their partner's hand, suddenly it's not threatening anymore. The partner will not prevent them from getting the shock. The partner is in no way able to control the shock. They're still getting a shock. But holding your partner's hand changed the activation of their neurons. And, this is the best part, the better the relationship, the bigger the effect. Being in a relationship and holding your partner's hand affects how your brain fires. That's cool. But the Coyne et al. Study goes even farther. Coyne et al. Looked at couples, older couples, in which one partner was suffering from congestive heart failure. The heart is weak, it doesn't pump strong enough, and fluid builds up in your body and in your heart especially. This is very bad and very dangerous. Everyone in the study, one person had been diagnosed and had an episode of congestive heart failure, but they were still alive. The researchers videotaped these partners, these couples, talking about issues in the relationship. Just talking. And then they took these videotapes, 10 minutes, and they showed them to other people, to coders, maybe on a staff of a team of undergraduates, and asked the undergraduates to count how many positive things and how many negative things each couple said in their interactions. And then they followed these couples over time, and they used public records to register who lived and died over the subsequent couple of years. And what they found was the couples that were nicer to each other were more likely to be alive several years later. Well, and it was a significant effect, a significant difference. Well, that's profound. So you're saying that if I'm nice to my partner, I'm more likely to be alive than if we fight or than if we're negative to each other? Well, that's pretty substantial. That's pretty important. And if that's true, then we better understand why are some people nice to each other and some people not. So that's what we're going to do. That's what this relationship is. That's what this course and this relationship is all about. So what do we want to know specifically? What do we want to know? I've sort of given you a sense. It's important. What do we want to know? Well, one thing I want to know is the longevity question. What I mean by longevity is, why do some relationships last and some break up? Why do some people stay together for a long time and some people don't? Why do some people who get married stay married and some people get divorced? That's what I mean. Well, by longevity, I mean the question about whether the relationship lasts or breaks up. That's the longevity question. Well, with respect to marriage in the United States, we actually know quite a bit about longevity because divorces are a matter of public record. So people can actually study exactly how many people get divorced. So we know something about it. Let me tell you something about it. We know that the divorce rate in the United States, this says 1960, 65, 70, peaked in the 1980s. In the 1980s, the divorce rate in the United States was higher than it's ever been. Since then, it's gone down a bit, but it's still pretty high. It's still way higher in 2006 than it was in 1960. Divorce rate is high. The divorce rate here is calculated as the number of divorces per 1,000 married women. But that's not really what you want to know. Because some of those women have been married before, some of those women have been married for the first time. What you really want to know is, if a couple gets married for the first time in the United States, what are the chances that that marriage will end in divorce today? And there is an answer to that question. The answer to that question is about 43%. About 43% of all first marriages in the United States end in divorce. But that doesn't mean that 57% last, because that doesn't count for legal separations. About 10% of marriages end by legal separation. So if you add that, now we've got over 50% of first marriages. First marriages end in what we might call marital dissolution, which means the marriage dissolves. The legal bond dissolves. Over half dissolve. Raise your hand if you think your marriage will dissolve. Well, I wish the rest of you luck. So the point is that it's pretty scary. That's a lot. Now, in what year, what year does the divorce rate the highest? Way early. This is year 2. This is less than a year, 1 year, second year. This is year 2. The biggest number of divorces happens in the second year of marriage. You figure in the first year it's kind of embarrassing. You don't want to break up in the first year. Because people could conceivably ask you to give the presents back. But by the end of the second year, you've given it a college try, and more people are saying, look, enough. I gave it a try and I can't do it anymore. And then after that, every additional year that people stay married, they're less likely to get divorced. And you'll notice, by the way, that it's a pretty steady drop-off. Some people think, well, isn't there like a blip when the kids go to college, and now the empty nest, and you're like, hey, now that we don't have kids, let's have sex on the kitchen table again. Well, it doesn't look like that's happening. Once the kids are after college, you're like, ugh, enough. Point is that there's a steady drop-off. Divorces don't blip up later. There's not any evidence for that. What there's evidence for is the longer you stay married, the less likely you are to be divorced. Yes, what's your name? Danielle.
Do you have evidence or data on, does it matter how old you are when you get married?
Yes, I have lots of evidence on all of that. So Danielle's question is, does it matter how old you are when you get married? And the answer is yes, hugely. How does it matter? The younger you are when you get married, the higher your risk of divorce. So if you're very young when you get married, you have exceptionally high risk of divorce, which again, the older you are, the less the risk. I know a lot more about this topic, and I'll tell you about it later. So, we know a little bit about divorce. Well, here's another thing, by the way. What about remarriages? Do remarriages have a higher rate of divorce or a lower rate of divorce? Higher. Nice, people who took this class before. Yes, exactly. So people who were remarried have a higher rate of divorce. Why? Why? Someone raise your hand and speak for the group. What's your name? Cassie? Yeah, exactly. I've been through this. I've been divorced before. I survived. I can do it again. Exactly right. So, so we know a lot about dissolution. We know about longevity. But here's the problem. Longevity is actually not that big a mystery. If I took you outside and we looked for a couple walking, and I said, okay, predict which couples are going to stay together a long time, or which couples are going to divorce, you probably could do a pretty good job. Like the couple that's walking like this, or the couple that's walking like this. Well, those couples are probably going to break up. And the couple that's walking like this, well, they're probably going to stay together. And if any of the arguing couples stay together, well, you know, you can imagine there's lots of reasons why they might stay together. Maybe they have to, maybe they're dependent, maybe they're staying together for the kids. The truth is that it's not that hard to predict divorce, and B, that's not actually the interesting question psychologically. The interesting question psychologically, or how about this one? Personally, what I care about is not getting divorced, because that's not enough. Is it enough that you don't get divorced? I dare say that certainly in Western cultures, what a lot of people want is not just a long relationship, but a happy relationship. A relationship that's fulfilling, however you define fulfilling. And that's the other question, which is the satisfaction question. Not just what makes a relationship last, but what makes a relationship happy, fulfilling, satisfying. And we're going to spend a lot of time on that question. But even that question, although it's interesting, isn't rocket science. So for example, what makes a relationship satisfying? Go ahead. What do you think? What would make a relationship satisfying? Yes, what's your name? Laura? Trust? That's not bad. What else makes a relationship satisfying or fulfilling to you? What's your name? Wendy? Whitney? Okay. Humor. Being able to laugh with somebody. Danielle? Fun and exciting. That would be very satisfying. And if it wasn't fun or exciting, that wouldn't be satisfying. What else? What's your name? Monique. Chemistry, whatever that is. Nice. I mean, yeah, I know it. I know it when I see it. Okay, what else? What else makes a relationship satisfying? What's your name? Jane? Good sex. Why not? Absolutely. What's it? Yeah. All right, finally a guy raises his hand. Yeah, we know a lot about what makes a relationship satisfying, at least to us. So we could say a relationship is satisfying if it's got this stuff, and it's not satisfying if it doesn't have this stuff. And again, if we went outside, we could probably distinguish between the satisfied and the unsatisfied relationships. So if we can already do that, then what's the mystery? What is it that puzzled Einstein? The mystery, what puzzles Einstein and puzzles me, is the change question. The question is not what makes a relationship satisfying, because I know what makes a relationship satisfying, and so do you. The question is, how is it that my relationship, which used to be satisfying, isn't anymore? At least that's the mystery whenever you experience that. How is it that I have a satisfying relationship? How can I keep it satisfying for a long time? Forever. That's what we want. The question that's mysterious is a question about change. Why do relationships change? Nobody wants them to change. When Albert Einstein married his first wife, after they had been pressed together in this most natural way, Albert didn't say, well, now I'm going to just let it go. He wanted to survive. He wanted to stay passionate. And it didn't. Then he married again, and he wanted that to survive. And it didn't. And everyone who gets married wants it to survive and wants it to stay passionate. And it often doesn't. And sometimes, miracle of miracles, it does. Well, what's the difference? How do people keep it going? That's the mystery. Now, you might have an answer to that right now, and I'd be interested to hear it later. But this is the real question, the real puzzle, the puzzle of change. Not why are bad relationships bad and good relationships good, but how is it that the same two people can be in both groups over the course of their life? Now that's a mystery. You get two people. Personally, I study newlywed marriage. I study marriage because it makes this mystery especially poignant. You get two people, they're standing in front of their religious leader often, all their family and friends, and they say to everybody, hi, we plan to stay together forever. Why? Because we love each other and think the world of each other. And so we're going to stay together forever through thick and through thin. Are they kidding? No. They mean it. Everyone means it. But many people end up, surprise, surprise, now 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, oh, I changed my mind. I don't want to be with this person ever again. I changed my mind. I don't feel that way anymore. What? I wanted to feel that way, but I don't anymore. And then my friend who wants to feel that way still does. Well, what's the difference? How does that happen? That's the mystery. That's what this course is all about. That is what this course is all about. What do we need to know to understand intimate relationship? Let me give an example of one. This is real data. This is real data from my research on marriage. Husband and wife. We measure them multiple times on a scale of 5 to 45. They said, how happy are you in your marriage? How good is your marriage? How much do you feel like a team with your partner? And this is the husband. Right from newlyweds, the husband's feeling happier than she is. And then what? And then what? What do you see? What do you think happened to this marriage? And what do you think happened at the blue line? You see that little blue line? What do you think happened at the blue line? What's that? What? Kids. That's when they had a kid. Oh. So this is right before they have a kid. And she's thinking, oh, maybe this is going to be good. And he's thinking, oh, this isn't going to be good. And then after the kid, he's like, oh, no, maybe it was good. And she says, no, I was wrong. And then he says, oh, I guess, okay, fine. She goes, yeah, tell me about it. That's our phenomenon. These two people started here, and they end up here. How did it go? How did it happen? That's what this course is all about. We're going to be addressing that question over and over and over again. And yes, we'll talk about communication, because communication is a huge part of it. But we'll talk about communication in the context of a lot of other things. And by the end, this is the phenomenon that we're going to address. How are we going to do it? Let's talk about it. So, by the way, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Benjamin Carney, and I'm the professor of this course. I'm a psychologist in the Department of Psychology. I actually got my PhD here in the 1990s, and then went away for 10 years, and then came back as a professor. I've been studying newlywed marriage since the 1990s, and this is what I do. I've been with Tom Bradbury, who's the other person who teaches this course. We've been writing a textbook together. The text for this course is a rough draft of our textbook. It's a reader. It's not published yet, so it's available at Course Reader Material, which is on Westwood Boulevard. There's also a copy on reserve at Powell Library. You want to see it? It looks like this. It's heavy. It's very good. Well, I don't know. I like it. Now, Tom Bradbury taught the course in the fall, and he had also a reader. But if you have that reader, I would probably get this reader, because that reader is the old reader. And this reader, for example, we've revised 3 chapters and added a 4th. Like there's a whole chapter in here that's not in that other reader. So my strong recommendation is probably want to get this reader, because this reader actually has the material you'll be tested on in it. There's also videotapes, video clips. We developed a DVD to accompany this text. It's awesome. There's 13 clips, which are it's like a total documentary, very professional, where there's like interviews with students talking about their relationship issues, and it's intercut with interviews with scientists. So you can actually see some of the people that I'll be talking about. You can see how they talk, and it's required. So do it. Here's the website link. So if you click this link, you get to a website where you can click on the different chapters, and each segment is 10 minutes. Like that's not a chore. That's going to be a pleasure. Really, the video clips I'm very proud of. So that's another requirement of the course. So read the text, watch the videos. The lecture slides, including this very slide, will be posted online at the Blackboard website. If you know how to get there, then get there and download the slides. I will always post the slides prior to lecture. It might be a little bit close to lecture, but it should always be there prior to lecture, hopefully at the beginning of the week. So you don't have to download them, but if you download them, then you can take notes right on the slides, which some people find useful. Announcements. Hey, raise your hand if you got an email from me at the beginning of this week? Isn't that awesome? If you didn't get an email from me in the beginning of the week, there's a problem, because I send out an email, and if I have something to say, I will constantly send out emails. How nice is that? I think it says here, make sure that BOL has your correct email. I think what I mean to say is make sure that URSA has your correct email. So if you didn't get an email from me, either you aren't enrolled in the course, or URSA has your wrong email. So you want to fix that, because what if I have something important to say? Then I would want to be able to tell you. And you can always email me too. So grading. How is this course going to be graded? Well, here's how. We have an exam May 1st, 50 multiple choice questions. That's in this class. It'll be on a Friday, in this room. We have a paper due May 20th. 5 pages, I think. I think it's 5 pages, whatever the syllabus says. And this is fun. It's a fun paper, because you can pick the topic. The syllabus, which is at the beginning, which you can download and is at the beginning of the reader, describes the paper in great detail. But basically, it's a chance for you to do some research on a topic of interest to you about intimate relationships. You're already here because you're interested in intimate relationships, so this is going to be fun to write, and it's worth 30% of your grade. And then a final in class. The last Friday of the course, in-class final, not cumulative, another 50 multiple choice questions based on everything we've done since the last exam. So what are you going to do finals week? I'm going to party down finals week. This course is over. So add this up, it's 100%. There's no extra credit. If you want to get a good grade, there's also no curve. There's no curve and no extra credit, so do well in the course, and that's how to do it. What else you got? Comments on exams. Here's what I've been told, that the exams are hard. Okay. So that's true. Now, the course, the exams are hard. I don't try to make them hard. I know all the answers. We're going to try to make it easier on you with sample questions before the midterm. There'll be review sessions, and there'll be no makeups. Come to the exam and do well on it. If everyone does well, everyone gets A's. I don't care. I don't want to curve it. I love giving A's. But in the past, that hasn't happened. If you have problems with the scheduling, fix it. But we won't change it. It won't give you makeup. What else have we got? A video. Go watch the video. I don't have time to show the video. So, any questions about how this course will be run? We have a TA. Her name is Lisa. Where is she? Maybe she'll show up next time. All right. Class dismissed.